The Parachute Adams is arguably the most popular and effective dry fly ever created. There are two subtle differences when compared to a normal Adams dry fly. And that's one, it sits a little bit lower in the surface film. That might entice fish a little bit more. And two, it's got a big old white parachute on top, which makes it easier to see. You're definitely gonna wanna add a bunch of these to your box in sizes 12 to 20. To tie this fly, you'll need a dry fly hook. Today I'm tying this in the size that I use the most often, size 14. You'll need some black or gray 72 denier thread, some brown mayfly tails or whatever other tailing materials you got laying around, some super fine Adams gray dubbing, some appropriately sized dry fly hackle in grizzly and brown, and then some carded white poly yarn. All right, gather up your materials. Let's get tying. All right, after getting our hook secure in the vise, we'll attach our thread by wrapping a few times forward and then working the thread back on top of itself. Then we'll grab our scissors and trim off the tag end. Now we're gonna dress our hook with a light layer of thread. This is gonna provide a base for our tail. To attach our tail, hold the 5 to 6 tail fibers at an angle and take a loose wrap or two. Make any necessary adjustments, ensuring that it's the proper length. I usually like my tail to be around a hook shank in length and that it's sitting directly on top of the hook. Now we'll wrap back to the end of our thread base and back up to the front, securing the fibers in place. And then we'll trim off the excess. And if you want to, you can lay down some more thread to even it all out. Now we're going to create our body with some dubbing. Form a 3 to 4 inch dubbing noodle, leaving about a ½ inch of bare thread at the top. Now we'll take that bare thread and wrap to the back of our fly and start to dub our body. Work your way up to the front gradually, tapering the body as you go. We'll stop at about the 2/3 mark. Now we'll cut off about 2 inches of carded poly yarn and attach the midpoint of our yarn piece right where we finished our dubbing. We'll take 2 wraps over the top and then twist the wings perpendicular to the hook. Then we'll take 2 more wraps, crossing over back to front. Then come back around and cross over, going front to back. This is going to ensure that our parachute doesn't twist around later on. To create our parachute post, we'll hold our bobbin pointing straight down and pinch the 2 sides of our poly yarn together. Now start to wrap around the base of the poly yarn a number of times until it all starts coming together. Now we're going to prep our hackle. Take 1 grizzly and 1 brown hackle feather. For parachute flies, I usually like the hackle to be 1 size bigger than the hook size. This helps keep it more upright while floating on the water's surface. Take your feathers and pull down on the base end of the feather, exposing the barbules. Now we're going to trim a fairly long portion of each feather on both sides. With those prepped, we'll lay them on top of each other and attach them to the base of our parachute post, with the shiny side of the feathers facing you, wrapping on both sides. Trim off any extra stem as needed, but you do want to have a bit of trimmed off stem as you work your way up the post. Now, like we did before, we're going to work our way up the post, wrapping around both of the hackle stems and poly yarn. Depending on how long your hackle feathers are, they can be kind of annoying and get in the way, but just go slow and steady, moving them out of the way or switching hands as needed. As you practice this pattern a few times, you're gonna get a feel for how high you should wrap, but you're definitely gonna wanna leave a little bit of trim stem still exposed after reaching the top. This is gonna make your hackle feathers wrap properly. After we feel like we've wrapped far enough, we're gonna work our way back down to the base. Now we're gonna finish off our body with another layer of dubbing. So create a 2 or 3 inch dubbing noodle, then wrap on both sides of the parachute post until you've built up a natural looking thorax. Time to wrap our hackle. Grab both feathers with either your fingers or some hackle pliers and start to wrap around the parachute post. Wrap top to bottom 2 or 3 times. Now hold those hackle feathers stationary and take 2 to 3 wraps around the parachute post like we did before, trying not to trap any of those hackle fibers in the process. This should secure your hackle in place so you can rotate the fly and trim off the excess hackle. Now we're going to get a little tricky and whip finish around the parachute post. And again, try to maneuver around the hackle fibers. Give it a good 3 to 4 turns, and you're ready to rumble. Let's clean up our fly a bit by trimming off the thread and our parachute to length. Some anglers like them longer, some like them shorter. I personally trend on the longer side. I just find it makes the fly easier to see and float better. And there you have it, a parachute style fish catching machine. If you found this tutorial helpful and easy to follow along, we've got a bunch more for you to check out right here. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you can become part of the stellar group of anglers we have in our community. Thanks for watching and live real life.